Hello, everybody. This is Mike from the Hey, Are You Still There podcast. My wife Beth and I would like to invite you to join us each week as we examine life at the intersection of marriage, family, careers, and ministry. Through 28 years of ministry, 26 years of marriage, 23 years of professional careers, and 21 years of being parents to 3 kids, our fun and honest discussions promise to have something for everyone. And now, on to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Hey, Are You Still There podcast. This is a special edition. This is a travel edition. Beth and I did one of these a couple months ago when we visited Antigua and gave a review of our trip there and our trip to Hawksbill, and just had a great time. So we just went on another trip. Beth, myself, and our youngest son, Josh, just took a trip to Europe for about 8 or 9 days. We went to, started out in Vienna, Austria, and then we went through the Czech Republic, and then ended up in Krakow, Poland, and then eventually flew home. So what we've decided to do is to, instead of trying to cram everything into one big podcast, we're just going to do 3 smaller podcasts, each one focused on a different country that we visited. And I thought about doing this a couple different ways. Earlier, we thought about maybe just doing it chronologically, just talking about our travel and where we went and how we went, and then what we ate and things we did in each country, and move on or whatever. But we just felt like maybe this would be the easiest way, just to kind of break it up into 3 podcasts. So that way, if somebody's looking maybe just for Poland, they don't have to put up with all the rest or fast forward. They can just click on the Poland podcast and they'll have it right there at their fingertips. So I'm going to go ahead and warn you ahead of time. I am terrible with pronouncing names. So I'm going to butcher a lot of stuff, but we're going to have links that you'll be able to click and kind of look at some of the things that we went and saw, because you probably will not be able to understand where we went based on how I know I will pronounce it. Also, Beth is better at remembering places we went and things we ate. I just kind of was there. And so, without further ado, the star of our travel show, here's Beth.
I'm here. Yay.
Beth, did you have a good time?
I did. It was fabulous. I had a great time.
Now, the question is going to be asked, why Austria, the Czech, and Poland? Like, why did we go to those 3 places? Real quickly.
Okay, super quick. So, part 1. I love medieval castles and things. Probably that's why sometimes I read things about knights and dragons and things like that. I also love World War II. And so any place, like a lot of cities in Europe have a lot of like the medieval stuff and World War II history. But a lot of places you visit, which I learned when, I went to Munich, were just destroyed in World War II due to bombings and things. But Krakow was one of the locations that had very little damage. So when you go there, you can still see a lot of the medieval history in addition to the World War II history. And then specifically why we flew in and out of the countries we flew into and out of, that goes back to travel, watching the flights, seeing which flights I could use points on and get there in the most inexpensive way. So for example, we had to go in the order that we went because we probably wouldn't have had enough points to get there if we'd have done it in the reverse order.
All right. So that's it. We went to the places we went based on Beth's preferences and Beth's pocketbook.
Well, yeah. And also I forgot to add these cities, from what I'd read, tend to be more expensive than like some of the bigger cities like in Western Europe, such as like Paris or London or a lot of the places in Germany.
Okay. So I'll kick us off. I'm basically going to just interview you, and because you're going to remember everything, and even though I was just on the trip a few days ago, I've already forgotten most of it.
That's not surprising. We've seen some your memory on times.
Memory's not great, and so I'll just throw in some anecdotes. But this first podcast is focused on Austria, specifically Vienna, and some of the surrounding area that we visited around Vienna.
Yeah.
So we flew out of Greensboro, North Carolina, which is closest airport to our house.
Yeah.
Flew into D.C., then took the red eye from D.C., and we landed in Vienna. What time?
It was like 9 a.m. their time, which would have been
3 a.m.
Yeah.
So they're 6 hours ahead. So we landed at 9 a.m. Beth she pushed us and she said, we're going to the hotel, we're dropping off our luggage, and we're going to hit the ground running.
And I also had told you we were carry-on only.
Yes.
That would give us the flexibility if we needed to travel between cities, but also not to stand at baggage claim and delay things even longer. So yeah, we got our luggage. We got to the hotel. We asked them to hold it, and we were ready to go. But neither of us, you especially didn't sleep very well.
I did not sleep well. I can sleep on a plane like nobody's business. Really, any motorized vehicle. If I'm not driving, I can sleep. Sometimes when I'm driving, I can sleep. But that red eye, I just could not get comfortable. I could not sleep. So I had no sleep. So we landed at 9 and you were like, let's go.
Well, we had also argued too, Josh was not sitting with us. And so one of us was supposed to take a seat further up in the middle, but Josh wanted to be independent. But I didn't find out until later that Josh didn't know his seat reclined. I think we've taken Josh to fly on budget airlines too many times where the seats don't recline. So
He's
also
used
did that.
to sitting on milk crates.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Spirit or
and
Frontier.
There are chickens and things around him. So I don't think he got great sleep. And even though I slept, I go prepared, which if y'all ever want to know all Beth's preparation and favorite things, I had the eye mask, I had the earplugs, I had some medication to help me sleep. I had the whole thing going.
You shared none with me.
I would have, and I offered, but you didn't want those. You tend to take pictures of me and make fun of the eye mask. But the thing is, we're in economy, so we don't have any kind of lay down seats. And then if somebody's getting up and they're pulling on the back of your seat, and then of course the flight attendants have to tell you, oh, we've got some turbulence. Let's put the seatbelts on, and then they have to do it in German because we were flying, they did it in both languages. So sleep was hard. But I had insisted to you guys as well that the only way we would beat jet lag was to power through that first day on the grounds for Sunday. And so my suggestion had been that we would drop off our stuff at the hotel, find a place to eat, and then I had booked a walking tour for us at 2, because otherwise I think the temptation is to find out, when you can check in and get back and go to bed early. And that would not work well for us adjusting to the new time zone.
Plus, it wouldn't work well for you maximizing your trip.
Well, that too,
You
because
don't
I
want
had
to
to
waste any
squeeze
sunlight.
That is true. And they had a lot of sunlight,
Oh my
which I
gosh.
loved. Yeah.
We'll get into that in a second. So we hit the ground, went and dropped off our bags, went and just found a local place to go eat.
Ate outside.
TripAdvisor is our friend. We swear by TripAdvisor. We look at that. We see what's around us, pick one that has a pretty good rating, read some of the newer reviews, and then go to it.
And we didn't know exactly where we were in the city because we had not done the tour yet, but we were in, I guess, part that had been destroyed by some different things. It was a newer part of the city that they didn't think
Where we stayed.
Yeah. The restaurant, because I was saying that was one of the few places he said had graffiti in the city.
I don't
and
even
stuff.
remember where we ate the first
We
morning.
ate at that place on the river, and that's where you got the strawberry. Yes, it was in that part of town. Yeah.
It wasn't more the business district.
It was,
Like
yeah,
the
so
corporate,
it wasn't like
it looked
the-
more like a traditional downtown.
Yeah, it wasn't like the old town.
Yeah.
And it was on the river, and there was some graffiti and stuff, which was unusual because you didn't see that much in Vienna otherwise. But it was still beautiful. It wasn't like where we were was ugly, but it wasn't like that old town feel.
Right. So
Yeah.
then we went up to the old town, the city center, as they call it.
And we immediately started just kind of
Getting our
take
bearings.
it in, look around. And usually one thing I love about European towns, they always have a town square, essentially, which that's something until I started traveling, I didn't know, because why would I? Because that's not, at Old Salem, we had the square, but I don't think that every place, it's not like in America, everything's built around this literal square. And in most of these European countries, they may vary by size, but you tend to have this very central location in the city that is shaped like a square. And there's all these like major like cathedrals or old buildings and things. And it tends to be probably the most touristy area that you'll be in because it is the center. It is the part that draws you there.
Well, it's like what I would imagine Times Square, New York would be if it was set in the 1700s.
Yes, yeah, like because Times Square was
there's
probably
an energy there.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like this square. It was a Sunday. It was just there's a lot of people and things going on, but not like overly crowded.
No,
it wasn't
was
like
not
you couldn't
bad.
move, but it was just fun. It was just. I mean, everybody, any green space had people
in it
having picnics and laying out and reading books. And there was just kind of this nice, fun, energetic hustle and bustle to it. Like just a beautiful Sunday afternoon.
We had good weather. It was very hot. There's been a huge heat wave going through here, which is also going through a lot of Europe. The problem is, when you're in Europe, I mean, our hotels were air conditioned, but most of the buildings are not. Most of these historic buildings aren't air conditioned. So a lot of your museums aren't air conditioned. The churches, they are built in such a way, that it will hold in a lot of the cool air and stuff, but it's not like, here, if it's 100 degrees and you have to walk out, from your garage to the car, and then you get in the air conditioned car and have to walk from there to a store that's air conditioned. This was more like you're walking from hot space to hot space. But I love too the whole European vibe. I don't know that that's why they eat outside, but I think that's probably part of it. Just like we talked about on our podcast a long time ago about how air conditioning kind of ruin people sitting in the front yard, kind of thing. I feel like European cities still have a lot of that. People still, some sarcastic people would be like, well, they want to sit outside to smoke. But that I don't think is true. I think it truly is. It's beautiful. It's refreshing to be outside. And sometimes it's cooler to sit outside.
Yeah, I mean, every restaurant we went to that had indoor and outdoor seating, outdoor had the most.
Yeah, it was weird. The only reason you sat inside was because there was no place outside.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love churches, and that's just one of my things. And it doesn't have to be a huge major church. That's one thing my kids have learned from me. I'll be wandering down the street like, ooh, let's go see if that church door is unlocked. Not in like Kernersville or whatever, where we live, but when I'm visiting bigger places that it might be.
You like the old historic cathedrals.
I do. I love the art. I love the feeling. Now, I do have some mixed feelings about the way people were probably treated building them, and was that a good use of people's money when people were starving and things like that. I mean, I have some mixed feelings about it, but as far as like the experience and what you get to see, I love them. So we started off going into St. Stephen's Cathedral, which is one of the main ones there, and it's it's built in like a Gothic style for people who kind of know that. A little beautiful. I mean, just stunning inside. But we couldn't go very far because we were there on a Sunday and they were having a Catholic Mass. So we went in, peeked, took a few pictures, walked out, and stumbled to another massive church, St. Peter's, which was in like the Baroque art style, more in architecture. But when we popped in there, they were also having Mass. So
and I want to point out, being a man of the cloth myself, they did, once they saw me, asked if I would participate. And I just said, look, I'm on vacation this week. I'm afraid I can't help with anything.
When you tried to do that thing with your hand where you make the sign of the cross and you did it all backwards, they were like, oh, we're sorry.
Like, oh, he's definitely a Protestant.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
He can't be in here. So one tip I will say, for people visiting, I take a scarf with me because it was blazing hot. I had on like a tank top. I keep a scarf in my bag. It's a respectful thing to do, to not have bare shoulders in a lot of these churches, particularly, if they're having Mass. But some of the churches are so strict about it. Like they even have these like free capes you can borrow essentially to put over your shoulder. So I just take an inexpensive scarf in my bag, and I carry that around Europe with me, so I'm ready to pop into a church at any moment.
Yeah, girls need to have the shoulders covered. Guys need to have their hats off.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of the
That's
big
kind of
biggies.
that's the big ones. Yeah. Otherwise, they're pretty laid back, I think, about going in.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we visited the Vatican 20 years ago.
Yeah, so it could have changed.
It could have changed. But even then, they were so strict, you couldn't wear shorts in.
Yeah.
Because I remember they gave me fake pants. I say fake. I mean, they were just papery kind of pants to slide on to cover up my legs. But we didn't have to do that here.
Right.
We wore shorts the whole time and everything was fine.
Yeah. Which, just as an aside, I do have to throw out one other thing. I panicked a little bit because you don't know culturally when you go places, and particularly in some places in like Central America and Africa, places like that, people are more conservative. So, wearing shorts or things like that might be offensive. They may want you to wear long skirts or something. So I just on a whim looked and found this blog that was saying, do not wear shorts in Vienna. It's very frowned upon. And it will just make it so clear that you're a tourist. That was so inaccurate because it was almost 100 degrees.
But it did not stop you from panicking over that.
I did panic for a little while until I went to Reddit and saw some people that said, I live here, and that's not true.
Reddit speaks the truth.
And it was verified because when we got there were people that you could tell. Now, the European men love some good capri pants.
Yes.
They like that in their fanny packs.
They are much better dressed than American men.
Yes. Every time you would see them, like it's funny because we were sitting in the hotel, we'd gotten some water, and I see this guy walk in, and I'm like, oh, he's 100% not American. And you're like, why? And it was like, he had his leather brown backpack, his very pulled together pants and shirt tucked in. It's just a whole different look.
It's a different vibe.
It is, yeah. So after that, when we're like, okay, these churches, they've got some stuff going on. We're going to wander around a little more. And we knew that we needed to meet our free walking tour at 2, and we had some time, and we saw the Albertina Museum. I'm like, Mike, I have a Southern accent. I don't know if I pronounce these things correctly. We had not previously looked at this. One thing I did attempt to do, and Mike could say if I did it or not, but when I built this trip, there was a meme I sent where what was that meme where they're like, we're going to have a relaxing vacation. And then what was happening in the picture? It was something like, speeding away, dragging everybody. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's kind of me. It's funny. My friend Marissa had even put in a card to someone who was going to be with me, like, hey, if you're looking to have a relaxing time, you picked the wrong girl to hang out with, talking about me. So I know that about myself. And I also know that it's important to have some time to wander around, because when I took Josh to New York City the first time, he was very much like, I don't want every minute of this scheduled. I want some time to wander around and feel the vibe of the city. But in these major cities, they're so big, and particularly not knowing the language, not being familiar with everything, you can waste a lot of time if you go in with no plan. Like, you can't go to New York City and be like, I'm going to be in the financial district, and then 20 minutes later, I'm going to be in Central Park. So I tried to plan some things, but also leave a lot of flexibility into the days. I mean, did I accomplish? Some spontaneity. I tried to build.
There was a couple times you could tell there was things you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And Josh and I had to override you. And that was fine.
I had a grid. I had like a kind of like an Excel spreadsheet I created. And so I had where we were, what country we were in, what currency they use, modes of transportation. And then I also had put, of course, where we were staying, check in and check out. And then I had a column where I put kind of like general ideas for the day. And for Sunday, the only thing I had planned was explore and a walking tour to stay awake as long as we could.
Yeah. But stumbling upon the Albertina was awesome. Was nice. It's an amazing art museum. I had never, I've been to art museums, but none that had what I would call famous artists in it. Mm-hmm. So to be there and to see actual Monets and Picassos was really cool. And I don't know how they are, at some of the bigger, think about like New York, Chicago type art things. But I was shocked that literally they had nothing protecting or blocking these paintings. You could walk right up
They would have
And-
a little cord across, I mean, not a cord, like sometimes they had that little thin wire on the floor that would stop you, I guess, from like sticking your nose right up to the painting.
I don't think they had anything. I don't remember seeing
in places. Maybe that was in the other ones.
Yeah,
But they
you
probably
could have
didn't.
just grabbed it off the wall
and taken off running with
took
it.
Took it to the gift shop and tried to buy it, I guess.
Yes.
If you had a few million, you probably could. But yeah, so it was really neat to see those artists and to see those paintings in real life right there, and you could get as close as you wanted to and just to look at them. And it was a great art museum.
And there's just something to be said, like as a person who I appreciate art, but I have no artistic talent. And, I took a class. It was Baroque literature and art one time when I was in college. And, you see the pictures in a book and it's very flat because it's a picture in a book, but to be there and you can see the thickness of the paint, and you can see the techniques that like Monet used, in like dabbing the paint. And so to your point, it's amazing. And this museum was good because we did it in about an hour, and it wasn't too overwhelming. It was like a good size. It had I think a nice collection. And so that it made it especially for our first day and stuff, to do that was really cool. And I'm trying to remember if that's the one. In addition, didn't it also have like the castle area where you went down? I think. Oh yeah, it did. In addition to the art, they had almost like reproduced what the rooms in a castle would look like. So there was like one room where all the walls were gold and it had all this like paintings on the ceiling and things, and another one where the rooms were red. And so we, at that point, had not done any tours of any palaces or castles yet. So it was just cool to walk through that as well.
Yeah. So then after that, we made our way to a free walking tour.
Yes.
You want to explain how this walking tour works, Beth?
So almost every city has these. I found these like years ago. I think I did my first one when I was in DC, and I didn't know how it would work, but true to their name, there are some that are different. There are some that will ask you to have a reservation and they'll hold it with their credit card. But if you look up free walking tour, like I think some of them in the United States are like free tours by foot or something like that. This one that I found is Guru Walk, Guru Walk, and we can put the links in. But they have a number of different ones, like, with different focus, but we picked the part one top highlights because that's really what I wanted. I mean, now if I'd been by myself, I'd have probably just done walking tours like over and over again to learn World War II history and this history or whatever. But a top highlights was really what we wanted to get oriented around the city. And you can speak as to, since this was your first experience, I think, with one of these, what you thought. But just as far as the procedure of what happens, most of the time you look on the website, you find the one you want, and then you make sure there's enough spots. We needed 3. You give your email address and stuff, and you sign up, and you don't pay anything. They just ask that you let them know if you have to cancel, and then they'll say, here are the coordinates for your map of meet in front of this fountain and look for the person with the green umbrella or the yellow umbrella, whatever color umbrella. And you go stand there at the appointed time, look for that person, and they'll check off your name. They do the tour, and true to their word, at the end, you pay what you think the tour is worth. So what did you think, Mike, of doing the tour? And
I thought it was great, especially, there was no sales pitch. They weren't begging you for money. They just say, hey, look, I'm going to do this tour. All the money that comes in, that's all I get. This is my full-time job. This is what I do. And that was it. And, it was a 2.5 hour walking tour. Mm-hmm. You didn't walk for 2.5 hours. You'd walk a block or so and stop. And then they would talk to you about point out different things. And our guide was great, very knowledgeable. You could tell he knows what he's talking about, or she would have known what she was talking about. I mean, these folks are they know their stuff.
In Krakow, they told us that, I don't know, it's probably different in each country, but they said to be a tour guide, like you had to take like a history course and do the course, a
1-year certification.
Yeah, like it's not like I can just wake up and roll out of bed like Mike does for 5Ks, just roll off the couch and do it. You have to be to have the knowledge to do it, which is nice. And it really orients you. Like, and some things you see, like, for example, you know, they'll usually intermix like some history and stuff to explain it with your, but Mozart was really important there. So we saw a statue of Mozart in this park, and that's where you saw the park was like Myrtle Beach or something, because there's just people everywhere. It was like, it was green space, and people were like, we are here to be here, having picnics and enjoying the day.
I mean, you pass a park in our town and there's not a soul out there.
Yeah.
You know, unless there's,
and we're not talking a park with like courts or
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No.
Unless there's like courts, like basketball or pickleball or whatever. Nobody's at a park in our town.
Just sitting on a blanket, eating a picnic, or
but
laying
it's cool
down.
to see that here. Everyone was just laying around on the grass, reading a book, talking, having a picnic. No phones.
Yeah, we didn't see hardly anybody on a phone. That was true. Like, they were truly just like sitting there like, we're going to enjoy this moment. Yeah. We're going to enjoy this time together.
And probably the best thing about it was, I guess that's where the guy pointed out the Natural History Museum, which we'll get to in just a minute.
Yeah.
And so that was the next day. But
he told us about...
We finished the walking tour.
And he showed us like the Imperial Palace, the museums, which are also in palaces.
Yeah, you don't go any of these places. It's really a highlight. He just walks around the city, points out stuff.
Yeah, you don't go in, but he'll tell you things like we ended up back at the churches we were. So he told us the difference in St. Stephen's and St. Peter's, you know, not just the architectural style, but he told us like in this one, you can climb up to the tower, you know, like they tell you tidbits but sometimes they'll even tell you things like, okay, everybody says that this restaurant's known for the cake, but I don't see why, because I think it's dry. There are better places to get the cake. And so that's what I like about it. You orient yourself so you don't feel as lost. You get a little bit of history thrown in there, and you usually can get a few ideas about some places to eat or things you might want to go back and do.
Yeah. So the tour wrapped up. I mean, Josh and I were exhausted. There was a time when I sat down on the tour and I about fell asleep. I was so tired.
And I have to admit, I did not sit down because I felt like I was swaying on my feet at times. I was so exhausted. And so that's one thing that's hard in this whole power through thing, because you aren't fully enjoying it as much as you could, because you're like, I just got to stay awake. I got to stay awake. Yeah.
So then we went and we're making our way back to our public transportation.
Well, we had dinner at that place.
On the way there, we decided we need to find some place to eat. And so again, we pulled up TripAdvisor, looked around at what was around us, found a really cool looking spot with decent reviews. And
I would never try to pronounce it because it's a really long, like German sounding word. But yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it was a great restaurant, very authentic.
They were so nice. We got a lot of attention because it was like 4:30 p.m. and nobody was eating at that time. But they had these really big like barrels and like kind of a picture in the back of the barrel. And so it was a little dark. It looked kind of like a old school pub or something. But the servers were dressed in like the traditional clothing, and they were so nice because like they could tell I had analysis paralysis on what to order, and you know, just made jokes and were very personable. It was a really good vibe.
Yeah, and there was a guy who was eating dinner in there by himself, and it looked good. And so I just asked the waiter. I was like, I asked the guy. I was like, hey, what are you eating? And he turned out to be American. Yeah. And he was like, oh, well, I'm eating this. I came here just for this. Like he said, it's great, best I ever had. And I'm like, then that's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
And that's what I ordered. And it was good. And it was just a neat restaurant. And we left there and jumped on the public transportation, took it back to our hotel.
Which was an adventure, the public transportation.
Let's talk about this first. Getting around Vienna was actually really easier than I thought it would be. Their train system is laid out really well.
Yes.
The place we stayed was really close to not just a stop, but the main hub.
Main, like you could look out our window and see the massive train tracks and everything.
So we just would walk there.
The central station.
You know, and you just figure out how do I get where I need to get, and then just jump on the train and go. And it's very inexpensive.
The one thing I will say though, and this is where we were tired. And so I know, like I tried to research it, but for me, I tried to research the trains when I've gone to Germany, Italy, different places. And they have regional trains, they have long distance trains, you have regional trams and buses. That's the part that can get confusing because every country does it a little different. They have different ways that they charge, essentially. That's the part. It's the ticketing that can be a little challenging because when we went to buy the first ticket to ride, I got a little overwhelmed and was like, I don't know that I'm doing this right. And I don't know if I have to validate this ticket because they have these machines where when you buy a paper ticket, you validate it. But I was using the app and I was like, you can't validate a ticket on the app. But what Vienna had, and I decided I was going to do for my sanity, they had like some passes you could buy, like a 24-hour pass, a 48-hour pass, a 72-hour pass. And I was like, I'm just buying this. I'm probably going to get this wrong. It seems like it was like $17 or something like that. It was so inexpensive. Yeah.
It was super cheap.
And then that was like, as long as you were in like Vienna proper and didn't go outside of that, like the center, you just got on any public transportation you wanted. And one thing that's interesting is when you have that, they don't have people, like you're not necessarily scanning something there, but what they do have is they have people that work for the transportation system. And if you don't have a ticket, it's kind of like an honor system. You take a risk if you don't have a ticket and you might get to ride the bus or whatever for free. But if they catch you, there's like huge fines, like 500 euros or something like that you'll be fined for not paying for a ticket.
Right.
Yeah.
So we went back to the hotel. What was our hotel?
It was the Andaz Vienna Belvedere because there's a place we'll talk about called the Belvedere. We were super near that and also near the central train station. I loved the hotel. I love the Andaz hotels. This one had, I don't know, we were on the 13th floor. One thing I love about Europe that I have to throw in, they usually what we would call the first floor or the main floor is the 0 floor. And they're very literal. They don't have a basement. They have -1 that you go to if you have to go to -1. But it was cool because it was really like 2 buildings together and you had this like walkway that you walked in between the 2 buildings, but they had it on every floor and it was all glass. So you could look out and there were like apartments across the way and you're like looking over and there's a glimpse into all these people, just living there in the city.
We didn't even turn on the TV because Beth just sat out there with popcorn and a drink and was basically a voyeur and just watched these people. It was like she had 30 channels on at once. She was like, oh, look at that couple. Look, they're cooking. Oh, look at that guy. He's naked, brushing his teeth. I mean, it was quite the show she got.
I wouldn't say it was totally like that, but we went in and we had one other thing about Europe that, at least in my experience, it's pretty challenging sometimes to find hotels that don't sleep two. That sleep more than 2 people. And in Europe, it's not unheard of too for them to, if you do have 2 people, to either have twin beds. And sometimes, like if you're a couple, they just push the twin beds together. So when we added Josh to this trip, we had to upgrade. So we had like this little suite that had like a little sitting area. And so they brought up a little rollaway bed for Josh. So he had his little rollaway bed in his room and we had our bedroom. And we noticed, we were like, man, when is the sun setting? And the days are long, we discovered.
Yeah, the sun was up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
I mean, as bright as you can imagine.
Because we woke up and thought we had way overslept.
Yeah, I woke up and I was like, man, it must be 10 or 11 a.m.
Yeah.
And I looked and it was 5. And it was still sunny at almost 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
You could have walked around outside with no light, no problem at almost 10 o'clock at night. So it's long days there, which is nice.
Yeah, probably not as nice in the winter, but great in the summer for us. And I think we all loved the hotel and we were all just exhausted, which goes into why you got to power through and stay up. Because like if we're going to bed, if we make it till 9 hour at the time we were, what is that? Like at home, like 3 p.m. or something, so normally I wouldn't be able to lay down and go to sleep all night, but because we were so utterly exhausted, we were able to get to sleep.
Yeah, so we all slept good that night. Got up the next day, went and ate breakfast again in a little restaurant, really cool restaurant.
GoldEgg.
the GoldEgg or Golden Egg.
And that's where we had like some authentic breakfast.
Yeah, some authentic Austrian breakfast there.
Yeah,
and,
like with the meats and cheese and stuff. Yeah.
And then we headed over to the Belvedere.
Yes.
Which I was surprised was not run by Mr. Belvedere, the guy from the 80s TV show. I thought maybe that was part of his family, but...
Well, like so many things, it is a Baroque palace, and it has like these manicured gardens, like, you know, with like the hedges cut into shapes and stuff, like you see, you know, if you watch like Downton Abbey or something, you know, like those old shows. It kind of had those gardens, and that part was free. There were lots of people out. It had statues, and it's just this massive palace. And if you stand in those gardens, you can look out and see the old town part, like the city. So it's like a great place to see that. But then it's also a museum. And one thing we learned pretty quickly is at their museums, you get a 2-for-1 deal, because I would probably pay what I have to pay just to go in and see the rooms and see the building inside, because you walk in and it's like everywhere you are, we might as well be at the Vatican, and Michelangelo might as well have painted the ceiling, because I can't, everywhere, the domes, the ceilings are painted in the building.
Pictures and words cannot describe how ornate and beautiful these places are.
Yeah, with like all the gold trim or sometimes the wood paneling, and all the rooms are different. So the rooms alone are stunning. And then they have amazing art too. Mm-hmm. And the Belvedere was really cool because you start out on the bottom and it goes way back to the old days with lots of religious art, and that was one of the reasons that these cathedrals were so important back in the day, is most people were illiterate. And so the way they learned the Bible stories was by seeing them portrayed in art. And that's where we learned, they had a lot of the altar pieces, like in the 15th century or so. A lot of churches had these like altar pieces that were kind of in 3 pieces that would fold out. So a lot of times they would have the 2 wings kind of folded in. And so you might see, 4 or 5 scenes painted, but at special times in the year, they would open up the wings. And then inside of that altar piece, there were even more biblical things. So, you might have like scenes from the Old Testament when it's closed, and then you open it and they might have things about like the life of Jesus or something. So that was really cool, just seeing the old religious sculptures and art pieces. I thought was really neat.
And the same thing. I mean, they had Monet's. I think they had Van Gogh there.
Yeah,
I mean, it was the art. I mean, so it is another, not just, hey, look at how fancy the palace used to be. It's an art museum
with
also.
legitimate, real, yeah. And like they had the Kiss, which is a famous work of art, and they had a lot of his work. But what I loved the most is they had an unfinished piece, and so they had a display where you could walk through, and because the piece was unfinished, you could see like the pencils or charcoal, whatever he used, but you could see like there's paint all around it, and then there are these white spots, and you can see where things look like they've been erased and stuff. And so you could read about the techniques they thought that he used to paint and stuff. So that was super, super cool.
Yeah. So that took a while that morning. We went and grabbed lunch.
Yes.
And then this is where the great debate came in. What do we do next?
And Josh had seen on the walking tour, one thing that he saw was the butterfly place. And I thought we would walk into this butterfly museum and it would be like, we have one in North Carolina.
Well, it's like a little butterfly house or something is what they call it. Like you go in, people have been,
Epcot's had them, you're thinking it's just like butterflies are going to come land on you and you're going to see. This place had like a bridge you'd walk up, and like a tree.
It was massive. It was enclosed in this 200-year-old like greenhouse, with a jungle inside of it,
and like a stream going through it.
Yes,
it was like,
and butterflies everywhere, and it was about 140 degrees.
I was going to say 2,000 degrees. I think I was on the surface of the sun.
It was hotter than 7 Hills.
Yeah,
it was hot.
I had my little hand fan I was trying to blow on me, and I would try to go to like a little place in the semi-shade and just hide there. Otherwise, I would have spent a lot of time in there. But it was
great.
So hot.
It was really neat.
Yeah.
And then we left there and decided to go to the Natural History Museum.
Yes, I can let you make fun of me and have the great debate here. Go ahead.
So Beth wasn't too thrilled about wanting to go here. I mean, she's not a natural history lover like Josh and I are.
Oh, no, don't you even try. I love animals, and I've been to the Natural History Museum in New York. Anytime we travel, we've been to like one of the ones in Denver. We go to these all the time.
Well, I didn't know your disdain for them until we found this one.
I don't have a disdain. My whole thing. Okay.
All right, and here's what she's like: if we've seen one, we've seen them all.
No.
That was her attitude, and she was like, "There's so much more to see. Why are we going to a natural history museum?" Because I love
a natural history museum when we're staying somewhere like a whole week, and it's like on the last day, like let's go learn about animals. But it's like, how's it going to be that different? That's what I thought in my head.
Now we go. Let's just fast forward to the end real quick. How was it?
I stand corrected. It was very different, and it was amazing. And as soon as we walked in...
Maybe the best we've ever been to.
Because it was also in a palace. Mm-hmm. So, again, the building alone with the marble stairs and all was stunning. But as soon as you walk in, there's like these rock collections, just rows upon rows in this massive room. And I'm like, wow, this is an impressive rock collection. And then you walk to the next room, and there's rows upon rows upon rows. And then you walk to the next room, and I'm like... Good gracious, how many rocks and minerals and stuff can this place have? Mm-hmm. And it had the largest meteorite collection in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the place was 2 floors, right? 2 stories.
Yes, yeah.
And it was at least the size of a football field.
Because it was a palace.
Each floor.
Literally.
I cannot tell you how big this place was.
Yeah.
It was massive. It was gorgeous. It was built... who knows when?
Yeah.
I mean, it was built hundreds of years ago. And it was ornate inside. It was beautiful. And it was just an amazing museum.
And it had like the dinosaur bones and stuff. And then had a lot. Josh got super excited. Took so many pictures that it filled up his phone because they had a lot. And granted, natural history museums have a lot of the taxidermy kind of. This one was a little different than like, if you've been to the one in New York, they kind of have each section, like they'll have, like if you go to see the lions, it's like they try to make it very authentic with a lion on a rock and some other animals that would be around the lion and the art. This just had a lot of different animals. They didn't necessarily have that level of the display per se, but they had such volume and had a lot of extinct or near extinct animals that Josh was super excited to see.
Yeah.
Tell them what you found though. We saw a ribbon on one of them and we're like, how did this Pac-Man frog win an award?
Yeah, they won some award at the World Taxidermy Convention or something. Who knows? Championships.
Yeah.
And dang, if it didn't deserve to win first place. It was amazing.
Yeah, because you're looking at some of these things like a frog skin or something.
Yeah, it's
and
a
you're
frog
like,
that they taxidermied and it looked like it was still alive. It was unbelievable, the detail that this place had. So we went in. We shut it down. We stayed there till it closed.
Because I think we knew when we went in, we had 2.5 hours. And we were some of the last people out. Like we might have been the last people out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 2.5 hours is about right. We probably could have stayed 3. I mean, I think an extra 30 minutes. I felt a little rushed.
I did too. But I felt like I was, but I think also, the building across from it too, they would have the window, because again, it's 1,000 degrees and the windows were open and you also got a glimpse. There was another massive art museum that was as big as the National.
It looked just like it.
It looked like, so you could look out and see that beautiful building. And then they had another art museum behind that. So if Vienna is a big city, kind of like the New Yorks and the Chicagos and stuff with all the museums. You could go and just do all that and stay really occupied for a long time.
Right. So by this time when it shut down, it was dinner time.
It was 6:00.
We went and ate dinner.
But that was the one day we could see a storm rolling in. Mm-hmm. So we decided not to eat outside.
Yeah, we ate inside.
We went to like an Asian fusion place.
It was great.
Josh got some kind of crab that was like...
He ate a soft shell crab.
That was fully the whole crab fried. It was very interesting.
He loved it. I think he said that was his favorite food he ate there.
We had dumplings that were very unique and different. Mm-hmm. And then and the bottom let out and it poured rain.
But while we're eating.
While we were eating, so it was perfectly fine. And then we took the tram home, and that was fun, like to take the tram back to our place and use yet another form, because Josh really loves big cities. I mean, even though he's such a nature lover, he loves the public transportation aspect. And so, did the subway, which they call the U-Bahn, did the trams, and did the buses. So we took advantage of all Vienna had to offer there.
Yeah. And so went back to the hotel, just crashed. Very tired, exhausted. Got up the next morning, which was our last day in Vienna.
And as far as the itinerary, just so everybody knows, I had the second day, just explored the city. I had looked at the Belvedere. I knew some different places, but it really we were just like, okay, now that we've seen this stuff, what do we want to do? The third day was going to be our very last day.
And we did some stuff. I don't want to make it sound like that's all we did was the Belvedere and the Natural History Museum.
We popped into a church.
We went into different churches
we
along
sat
the
at
way.
a cafe and people watched and would eat a snack.
I think was that the day
we went to the comic
books?
book. No, that wasn't the day you bought them, but that was the day you went to a comic book store and didn't buy them. We went up on that section of town, and you didn't find any, or maybe you did.
No, I did. That was weird.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm a comic book collector, and one of the things I love to do is when I'm in these other countries, all these publishers will put things out in the language, and so I was like, I'll look and see, and sure enough, there was a comic book store right near the square, and so we walked down there, and I picked up a Spider-Man comic in an Austrian language. It was great. And so I guess, what do you call it? Would it be written in German?
I think it was German. Yeah, I think that one was German.
So that was cool. So we did some other stuff. So we obviously
we wandered around. Yeah,
but the two big things was the Belvedere and the Natural History Museum.
And so for the last day, I'd researched all these things. Like you could try to do a day trip to Budapest, but then I was like, but here's the pros and the cons, everybody. You might be on a train for 3 hours each way. So 6 hours of your day is a train. Or there was a massive lake that's supposed to be beautiful, but I'd read mixed reviews on it because some people said that it was a tourist trap and some people said it was beautiful and you should definitely go. So what we actually decided to do was to take a train and go into this valley that's on the Danube River, and it's known for growing grapes, for vineyards and wineries, for apricots, and for the old towns and castles. And originally I'd read the best way to explore it was to get bikes, but the boys overruled me on riding 30 miles on bikes during the day. So I'd researched and found out that there was a pass you could buy for the day. And it was a pass that would allow us a train ride to one of the towns, whichever one we picked, because there's once you get the map of the valley, there's multiple towns that you can stop at. And then it also allowed you to ride a river boat, and then to have a train ride back to your hotel. So I felt like that pass was the best deal. That's what we bought. So we took the train. Mike got a little stressed because, as I said, there's regional trains, and then there's longer trains. I don't know what you call them, but trains that go further away. And those trains sometimes have assigned seats, but because I bought this pass, they didn't give us assigned seats. So then we get on this train and sit down.
Yeah, we sit down, and then I see Beth don't you get up? Something happens. We're separated.
Yeah.
And then Beth messages me and texts me, and you're like, if someone comes and has your seat, you're going to have to get up. And that mortified me. Yeah. I am like, what in the world? I don't know. I don't want to have to get up if I'm in somebody's seat. What are you talking about? Why don't I have a assigned seat? You didn't explain any of this to me.
Because I didn't, again, every country's different. And even though I'd read about the difference in the trains and experienced it to a certain extent, I didn't know really what we were supposed to do. And I even asked people on the train, okay, we don't have assigned seats. And they said it was unusually crowded. The trains were, because normally because they had these little like electronic like little things above the seat, and it would show when that seat was reserved. Like it's reserved between city X and city Y, and then it would have for one seat, and the other seat would be, city X to Z. And so you could the seat was quote free, as long as you weren't between those cities, which of course also are in German, and I don't know where any of these are. So as we're stopping, so we ended up kind of just going to the section of the train where it's connected and where the bathrooms are, just standing up. Because it was just like, whatever. But yeah, so we get there, and the first place we go is Melk. And it's a town that, and a lot of people start there. They're like, the towns kind of on the ends of this valley are Melk and Krems. Who knows if I'm saying these right, but you start at one or the other. And so we started at Melk because they had an 11th century abbey. It was like this monastery, like way up on this hill looking over the town. And I have not toured an abbey that is functioning and has people there. So,
and you're a big fan of Downton Abbey.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was a fan of Deer Abbey.
Yeah.
So we were both looking forward to seeing this Abbey.
Yes. And we didn't see Abbey.
No,
where's Abbey?
Either one of those, we didn't see
them. So we went through the town, which was pretty deserted when we got there, walked up big hills. I mean, it was some steps on some cobblestone streets.
But the town was gorgeous.
It was beautiful.
It was just what you would think of an old little country town in Austria. Yeah. Whatever you envision, that's what
kind of
this
what it was. Yeah. And then you have this massive abbey up on the hill. And I mean, when I say massive.
Oh, huge.
And they had, you could pay for a tour, not a tour, but a self-guided tour. And you could walk through, and they had like a part on the outside where you could see the city down below you, which was beautiful. They had this stunning library with all of these old books and these cool stairs that you went up and down to get in the chapel. That's where there were some annoying tourists. Thank goodness they weren't American, because usually I feel like Americans, everybody's like, oh, you Americans being bad tourists. These people were speaking German, but they very clearly in a lot of the rooms said no photography. And there was a guy that not only was taking pictures, but had his volume turned up to maximum volume. So it makes that click sound every time you take a picture. And then security's like, no pictures. And he'd just walk in the next room and he'd take pictures. He
just didn't care.
He did not care at all. He was going to get his photos. But I thought, the one thing I would have liked, it was more focused on kind of like, I think, the history of the building, and there were lots of artifacts and information, and you got to see the library and stuff. I would have loved to have seen like something about the daily lives and stuff of the people living there.
Yeah, because there's still monks living there.
Yeah.
And doing whatever
they do.
Whatever monks do.
Yeah,
and that's what Beth wanted to see.
Yeah.
She wanted to break out the voyeur in her. She just like she watched the people in the building across the way. She wanted to sit there and watch all these monks go about their normal activities.
Well, I just wanted to see a little more about like what they do and how they support themselves and what's a day in the life like, But it was still fabulous and it was beautiful. And then we had to go eat, and we went to this little Italian place. And one thing we had read there was a few restaurants that had good reviews, but a lot that didn't, and it's very expensive. This town was more expensive than Vienna. Mm-hmm. But the place we went, our waitress was so sweet and patient, and I got the gnocchi with shrimp, and then you and Josh got some crazy pizzas with a lot of fresh ingredients on them that were delightful.
Yeah, it was great.
And we passed a cool shop with cat stuff. So we decided to check that out. And then we walked down and found our boat. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time we got on the boat, and we couldn't decide. By this time, though, even though we left on the 8:10 train, it took over an hour to get to Melk. Then you got to hike up the massive hill on the cobblestones, tour it, eat. So at this point, it may be like 2:00. So it's like, if we're going to end in Krems, it's like we only have time for one other little town. And so we were agonizing. There's one town that has the castle where Richard the Lionheart was supposedly held, and a lot of people go to that. And so we thought about doing that, but Mike had checked TripAdvisor and found out that there was a castle that we could get to that was a, quote, 10-minute walk. We'll come back to that. It was in the little town of Spitz, Spitz. So we get on the boat, and this boat just slowly goes down the river. And I'd read that a lot of times a year it can be really crowded, but it was not crowded at all. There was no one we could.
And it's a massive boat.
Yeah. So we could sit on the side. They had a covered area inside where you could eat and buy drinks and do all that if you wanted to. But we were outside and could walk from side to side to get pictures or whatever. And just, you're just going down the river and just seeing stuff. And then you stop in Spitz, and we got off. And we thought maybe there had been some type of national holiday in that town that we didn't know about, because all these people get on the boat, but it was like everybody left the town, because we go and we're like, is this a deserted ghost town? There was no one there.
Nobody in this town.
It was beautiful. It was another cobblestone streets, flowers and flower boxes, but just not a human being around.
Yeah, it was weird.
So talk about our 10-minute hike to the castle, Mike.
Well, it did take us 10 minutes coming down.
Yeah.
It took us a bit longer to go up. So we saw this castle. It's sitting up on top of this hill.
And it's in ruins. It's not like a fancy palace. It's a castle that's crumbling and stuff. And,
several hundred years old.
Yeah.
But we just started hiking, and we walked down streets, and then finally get to the trail, and we walk this trail that zigzags up the mountain, and we finally get to these ruins.
But before we got to the ruins, we got to that part too where you just have this view of the valley. So this
valley is full of vineyards.
Yeah.
Just full of it. And that's what it's known for. And so you can just sit there, they have these benches, and just look out over these valleys, and it's just, from the bottom of the mountain up a mountain, everywhere. Everywhere you looked, there was vineyards. If there wasn't houses, there was vineyards.
And literally, when we're doing this hike, we are the only people doing this. And we're I don't know exactly where the, quote, trail is, because part of it's wild grasses going around us or something. But and when we got to the castle ruins, it was big.
Oh, it was very much bigger than it looked down below.
Yes, yeah.
And in pretty decent shape for what once you got up there, you're like, oh, there's actually a lot to look at. And
there was nothing to read or anything, but it was fun because you felt like an explorer.
Yeah.
You're just going in and whoa, what is this? Or,
they would not have allowed anyone inside that castle in America.
In America? Oh my gosh, no. They at one point they had this little wood piece across something to keep you from, I guess, falling to your death.
Into a well.
Yeah, exactly.
It was crazy.
But we were talking about that. We were in the States, you'd have been able, if they even let you do the hike up the mountain, then you'd have just stood at the base and looked, and everything else would have been dangerous and gated off or something.
But there was nothing gated off about it. If you could climb it, you could go.
And there were some steep steps in some of these. And so part of it was the ruins that were outside, and you're kind of standing in the grass surrounded by these walls, maybe picturing, what it looked like. But then they had this little tower thing, and with these really narrow steps that we were worried about, Josh. It was kind of okay, well, you got to go down this way, and so you can hold on. It was crazy.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was a highlight of that day, I think. Going
and
to that
that was probably my favorite thing we did. Probably partly too because it was we had it all to ourselves, to the point that I got tired of carrying around my bag and I just left it there. We did see eventually a man that was alone came and climbed up and took some pictures, and we saw an older couple, and the wife stayed down on the bench, and that guy came, and we saw a few people. So we did, there were a few people making this hike, but just after going to so many places that now are just overtaken by tourism, to be in something that old and to have those stunning views, and just to be able, Josh, I think, loved, because, we'd hear him, he'd be like, ooh, I found something. Or he'd just be over oh, there's even this little room in here. And so it's just so much fun.
Yeah. And then we got back down, went out on the boat again.
Well, that's the one too, though. We had to actually walk a little bit. Wait a minute. Now I'm confusing myself. Milk was the one we had to do that. We walked a little bit in a park to get to the boat. This one we just walked right back down
and got on the boat again where we were, and it took us down to the final city, which was a big city.
And part of the problem with it was where you land is not like beautiful or anything. It's just like an area kind of on the water. And so there's like a kind of a road and a lot of cars parked, and we didn't know where we were going, but we'd seen an Aldi. And I was like, I am going in this Aldi to see what it's like. And man, Aldi's a lot better there with their fresh bread and croissants and cool stuff. But we went into Aldi and got like a drink and some water, and then started to make our way to Krim's. But unfortunately for us, this is a much bigger city. Also really pretty, like had those in between the buildings and the touristy part, the flowers, had churches. But at this point, it's like 7 p.m. And we didn't know how much that town, these small towns, I guess, just kind of shut down.
They just roll up the sidewalk at 7.
Yeah, it's just everything's closed. There were a few restaurants, but one other thing, two things about restaurants. One, you're not gonna, if you're a person and you're like, I want to have super fast service, like, because in the States, they rely on getting tips. And so I feel like people want to turn over your table. So the busboy's practically getting your food before you've even finished. Oh, here you have to sit and like practically flag down somebody to bring you the ticket to pay, because they just linger. They just sit outside.
You have to assume you're going to spend an hour and a half at every meal.
You just have to build that in.
If you get out before that, great.
That's you've won. But the other thing they don't have really is takeout, or as the British would call it, takeaway, because everybody sits and there's no like fast food. There's not like McDonald's in this little town where it's like. So our problem is 7 p.m. We're really hungry. We need to eat something because we have over an hour to get back on the train. And and so we were trying to find a place. So we eventually just got like cheese sticks or something at this random place just to have something to eat. But I would have really liked more time to explore that city. I think it was cool. But at that point, we knew we were going to have to get up early the next morning, and we had the train ride.
At that point, Beth was getting hangry.
And
we were just like, we have 2 goals: get back to the hotel and get some food in Beth's stomach.
And so we did have our one hiccup in travel that night, of course. And that was once we made our way to the train station, we get on the first train and we're fine. And these trains, one thing I will say too, the public transportation runs like clockwork. And you'll see, they'll tell you to stop. You need to, especially if you have luggage on the train, you better be getting up and standing at the door, because it is not something where they're like, oh, we're going to hold the door open to wait for this person running.
You've got 30 seconds to get on, get off, and then it moves on.
And there's nobody with strollers or like motorized. There's nothing like that. I mean, it is like you are on and off. And so we got to what would be our stop and had to be on and off and as soon as we get off, this other guy was getting off with us and he's like, oh, whoa, no, and got back on. Well, he's obviously from around those parts, so he knew what was happening. Well, our second connecting train into town was canceled. And we didn't know that until we got off the train and our train was gone. And these stations, there are massive train stations that are huge, like airports, the central stations that have food and everything. And then there are the stations like we were in that literally have one track where the train goes one direction, one track where it goes the other direction. It's outside and they have a vending machine and there's no people that work there. So it's not like I could go say, oh, our train's canceled. How do I get back?
It's just a little tiny train stop in the middle of the country.
Yeah. And just like literally and nothing around you. So it's not like you're going to get an Uber your rest of your ride back. So we had to like really be flexible and make sure we could find the trains. And at that point, the one thing that did stress me out is there is a certain point at night, like if you don't get out of there by like 10 or something, the trains will stop and you won't get home, you know? And so, but we were able to reroute ourselves and figure out another train and get on that train. And we made it back safely.
Made it back.
Exhausted. But yeah.
Beat down. And then Beth got some food and she was happier. And
oh, and we've forgotten the one thing we did the night before. You and I went down to the sauna and did that, but they had the ice thing that we never figured out exactly how to use it.
Yeah, this hotel had a lot of cool stuff in it. Half of it we didn't understand.
Yeah, we didn't understand what to do with it. So we were like, and I even Googled it, and I was like, I still don't understand how you do this. But yeah, so we did some other fun stuff. Yeah.
So that was our time, because the next morning we got up and started our
next
trek
adventure
to Poland. But we went through the Czech Republic and made a few stops there, and we're going to talk about that on the next podcast. But that was our tour of Vienna, Austria.
Yeah. And surrounding areas.
And the little surrounding areas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a great time. Highly recommend it.
Loved it.
Loved it. And we'll put some links on this podcast. So if you want to click on some stuff and see the hotel, or maybe see some of the museums or things like that, if you're thinking about going to Vienna or taking the boat ride or anything in between, they'll be on there.
And that's also a great place. I think a lot of people do the biking tours through the area.
There's a lot of bikers.
Wineries, a ton of bikers. Lots of outdoor activity. And the other thing I will plug, I mean, I heard from people on the plane, as well as just reading, that Vienna is one of the places known for really stunning Christmas markets. And I can imagine in that old square surrounded by, those beautiful churches and buildings, that their Christmas markets would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thanks a lot for joining us on our review of our trip to Vienna, Austria.
Yeah, we got to go down memory lane.
Yes.
Mike remembered a lot he had already forgotten.
Well, you're telling a lot of this I heard for the first time, I feel like.
You weren't even there.
I was like, where did we eat? What did we get? I mean, so.
You're like, we missed it. There was a train that was canceled.
You crammed so much in, my brain could not keep it all.
That is the one thing I will say. Like, you told me by like day 3 that you felt like day 1 was weeks ago. You felt like we'd already been there for weeks or something, because we had done so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
if you want to relax with me, you need to just like get a place in the North Carolina mountains or the beach or something, because otherwise this is what you get.
Yeah. If there's unexplored territory for you, you're going to be going.
Yeah, that's the problem. So, unexplored is the key.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, part 2 will be our next podcast. If you care to join us for that, that will be our travel through the Czech Republic. And until then, this is Mike.
See you later. And Beth.
And this is Hey, Are You Still There?
Now I just